So shall we start now or shall we wait for a few minutes? What do you think?
I think it's time now, Bhante. I mean, we can start, Bhante. Thank you, Bhante.
Right. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good morning, everyone. Today will be the last lecture about the explanation or description about the ultimate realities. So far, we have discussed about the Paramattha Dhammas, the basic characteristics of Paramattha and the Paramattha Dhammas. Then we started to enumerate what are these realities according to the Theravāda tradition. Then first we discussed, we found that there are 89 chittas, 52 chetasikas, and 18 types of rupas, which are called ultimate realities. Nibbana we excluded because we are talking about the conditioned realities, which are made out of causes, which are produced by causes. Then we first we discussed about the chetasikas, explained the chetasikas and how they are related to the chittas. Then we gave some brief explanations on 2 lectures about the chittas separately. First, we introduced the chetasikas and how they are related with the chittas. If I recall our memory, our classes, we first classified what are the akusala chetasikas, unwholesome mental factors. Then the consciousness which are connected with these unwholesome mental factors were designated or were named as unwholesome consciousness. The mental factors which were called beautiful, their associates were called beautiful consciousness. Then we had some miscellaneous types of mental factors. We call them ethically variable ones. The ethically variables were connected with all types of chittas, but there were some 18 chittas that are only connected with these ethically variables, but not with the beautiful mental factors and unwholesome mental factors. Because the mental factors were divided into 3 groups, put into 3 groups: akusala, unwholesome, beautiful, and then ethically variable. Akusala, sobhana, and anya samana. These are the Pali terms. Then we briefly discussed about the chittas, the 89 chittas. They are groups. They have unwholesome ones, the beautiful ones, and also some 18 consciousness which are only connected with ethical variables. Then we divided the chittas into like 54 chittas belonging to the sensual pleasure, kama realm, 15 belonging to the rupa avachara realm, the fine material realm, then 12 belonging to the immaterial realm, and 8 as the supramundane in the supramundane sphere. I hope you have got some idea about these things, like consciousness, though it is classified as one thing, consciousness, the act of focusing on a particular object, it has been categorized accordingly in this manner into 89 chittas, 89 consciousness, like which realm they belongs to, what sort of associations they have, and so forth. There is lots of information about each and every chitta that we need to discuss in future. But at the moment, we are just giving an overall picture about what are they, what are the realities. Now, today we are going to discuss the last part, the rupa, the matter. So if you go into the handout, previously given handout, the list of the Paramattha Dhammas according to Theravāda tradition, today we go to the last page, page number 8. Page number 8. There we find Rupa, a subtopic called Rupa, 4 great elements and 14 derived elements. 4 great elements were called Mahabhuta. 14 derived elements were called Upadaya Rupa or Upada Rupa. Even the Ya, Upadaya, the second subtopic. Upadaya, even if the Ya is dropped, still it's okay. Upada Rupa and Upadaya Rupa, both are correct according to the tradition. So this is the basic classification of Rupa. Rupa means, normally in English we translate this as corporeal. That is a translation for matter. Corporeal element. So corporeal means something which is related to matter. I hope my spellings are correct. It's matter. So we normally call it, we can also name it as a physical realities, physical elements, corporeal elements, or the matter. So basic characteristic of a corporeal element or matter is they manifest. I'm using the word manifest. They manifest as things. They manifest as things, substances. So normally the substances or things that we know, that we experience in day-to-day life are sometimes called matter. We can call it corporeal elements. So when we investigate what these things are, what a table is, what a chair is, when we go in that intellectual analysis, which we discussed in a few lectures ago, the intellectual analysis of dividing what we experience. In this analysis or in this process of analytical process, in the end, we find certain natures or certain, it's better to say the natures, sabhava we call, certain natures or certain qualities that cannot be reduced any further. So in the intellectual analysis of a substance, when we go further, step by step, what we end up is some physical qualities. Physical qualities. For instance, we take the example of a table. A table is a thing that is made out of wood and it is kept in a certain manner. So when we think about this table, we understand that there is nothing other than wood here. The basic essence of the thing which is called table is the wood. There's nothing other than the wood. The same wood can be used to build a chair. So what is a table? Then the question comes, what is actually a table is? Table is an idea which comes into our mind, looking into the manner in which the wood has been kept in the space. I'll repeat that sentence again. How the wood is kept in the space, the manner in which the wood is kept or assembled, looking into it, we get a certain idea called a table. But in reality, we find there's only what there is only pure wood. That same wood we arrange in a different arrangement, a different assembling, then we can call it a chair, or then sometimes we can call it a cupboard. The same wood can be transformed into another thing. But when we think intellectually, we find that in all these three cases, whether it was a chair, whether it was called a table, or whether it was called a cupboard, or even a small house, if we have used the same substance, what we get is just pure wood, the same wood. Table has been used to build a chair in another occasion. If we change its order or the manner in which it is fixed. So then we find the idea of a table is a concept that we build in our mind, looking into the manner the wood has been assembled. Then we find we can call table is a bunch of wood. We can separate it, for instance. Pile of wood. Then a question comes, is a casual bundle of this wood, can it be called the table? Is the wood is the table? If someone argues the wood itself is table, regardless of its manner, regardless of the manner it has been kept, in all the times we should be able to call it or name it as the table. Because even a casual bundle of wood, even we pile it and tie it with a rope, still we should be able to call it the table. But we are not in that usage. Why is that? Because it's just a pile of wood. And what is a table then? If wood is not the table means an idea which has been constructed in our mind or which occurred in our mind, looking into the manner how the wood has been kept. So then we find wood is not a table. Wood is not a table. Another question, did the table arise when the wood has been assembled in such a manner? No. Still, it's only wood is there. Nothing new was created. Nothing new has been created in this assembling, in this fixation. Only thing is, we have got an idea, looking into how it has been kept, we get an idea that this is a table, and we name it. In one language, we call it table. In another language, we may call it in a different name. So then we take one piece of wood, or we just analyze the wood, and we find these wood are made out of certain particles. Typically, we know things are made out of particles. Even scientifically still, even after the quantum physics, emergence of quantum physics, still the idea of particles has not been disproved. Particles do exist according to science even. Sometimes these particles behave like a wave. So we call it particle wave duality. That's a different case. But still, even according to science, particles do exist. We call them subatomic particles. We're not going to do that scientific explanation, but when we analyze, we find there are certain particles which have their own identity. They are separate from each other. These particles are bound with each other with certain bounding forces. We call them apo. We can call cohesion. There are two types of cohesions. Cohesion which is within the particles and which also spread outside the particles. That we shall be discussing whenever we come into the chapter of Rupa in detail. So these are just particles. Then the particles are arranged in the array of these particles. The way they are arranged, we get the idea of a wood. Wood is also, when we analyze intellectually, we find it's just not by someone, but naturally, which got comprised into a one form. Even we investigate or look into such a piece of wood with some micro, we find that they are separate things. They are separate different things. So then we find, can these particles be called the wood? Can these particles be called the wood? The same particles can be arranged in a different way or give some different appearance, and we may call it something else. But sometimes we can say this woodness would be there in all the cases. But still, a single particle we are not going to call wood. We are not going to call wood a single particle. So then, one particle. If we take one particle out of this lot, we make it larger. this, imagine if this cannot be divided any further physically. If this cannot be divided any further, physically cannot be divided any further. So this would be the last building block of the physical world, if this cannot be divided physically, I would say. But the Theravadians' approach was, they thought and they think that this particle can be further divided. Physically, this is undividable, or whatever it is, not dividable. But intellectually, they find, the Theravadians find, this can be divided, but not into physical parts. This existence of this very particle can be explained in terms of physical qualities. In terms of physical qualities. We call them physical natures. Or what are these qualities? For instance, one is hardness. Another is heat or coldness. Cohesion and pushing nature. I hope you can see the board. Hardness, heat or coldness, cohesion, the pushing nature. Difficulties in seeing the board, Dr. Ryan? Right, okay, right. So this is how the Theravadians would explain. What is hardness? What is cohesion, physical nature? We have to have separate lectures for these. We explain it. How these for one particle, we call it a kalapa, one unit, and how do they affect beyond the unit? Like how two kalapas, two units are interrelated to each other. So these physical qualities has to be explained within a unit, how they affect outside the unit as an overall group of units. Anyway, so these are the physical qualities into which a physical thing can be reduced. A physical thing can be reduced into these qualities. These are not things. So when I say quality, what do we mean? We mean a thing does consume space. A thing consumes space. A substance consumes space. Normally, that's how matter has been explained in the ordinary level. Matter is how much of elements, that how much of particles that we have in a physical thing. So sometimes, it is called the mass, not the matter. Sorry, mass is the physical stuff that we have in a certain body. So these physical things, the matter normally consumes space. It's a thing. It has a weight. It has a, better to say, it has a mass. It has a mass. So, but when we talk about the physical qualities, they do not consume any space, and they do not have any shape. They do not have a specific mass, we would call. But when they come together, when the physical qualities are connected with each other, when they come together, they manifest. Now, if we go into the reverse order, they manifest as a physical thing. They manifest as a physical thing. These things, these small particles which are constituted with physical qualities come together, they create they appear as a one thing. This is a particle. When the particles are come together, they appear as one thing. Those things are, when those things are connected, insert things called table, chair, house, the human body, trees, and so forth. This is how the Theravadian explanation about the corporeality. So in this analytical process, the things or the qualities that we end up with, as they cannot be divided any further. Hardness is a quality. This hardness is a quality that allows something to be kept on itself, on its surface, and it's also a rough nature. A very basic explanation of hardness is it doesn't allow another substance to go through it. It doesn't allow another substance to go through it. That's why it can act as a surface. It's the quality. If we analyze this thing, it is the quality. If two things come together, if two things clash with each other, they will be pushed away by each other. Why is that? The A thing, the substance, the A particle doesn't allow the B particle to go through the space where it consumes. So it's a very basic quality of hardness, not letting another substance to occupy its own space. So that's why that is a quality. It's a quality which we can experience in such a particle. For instance, even in science, when we go into subatomic level, how do we explain mass? Mass is the inertia mass, the resistance of the substance for the acceleration. The resistance of a substance for the acceleration. Otherwise, beyond that, we cannot explain even scientifically. We have a relativistic mass and also inertia mass. According to inertia mass is the substance is there is a certain kind of a resistance for the acceleration of the thing. So when you want to accelerate a certain electron, there is a certain mass which opposes this. That's why things cannot reach the speed of the light according to the physical science. So likewise, this hardness, normally, if I talk about the hardness only, hardness is a quality that doesn't let this another thing to go in. So normally scientifically, we stop in the subatomic particles. They call it scientifically, we have the diameter and it has a certain space, it consumes a certain way, and it also has a volume. So according to Theravāda, I'm not saying that this is proven. The Theravādian perspective, the way of thinking of Theravādians, maybe scientists would not agree on this matter in this case. Now, Theravādians' perspective, they do not like to stop in a certain kind of a particle. If a particle is something which consumes space, which has a shape, and which has a volume, if it is something, they will analyze it into four qualities. How these four qualities exist in our hardness is some kind of a quality. We can roughly say is the hard quality, the rough quality, the very basic quality of hardness. It doesn't let another thing to go through something. That is a basic quality of hardness. That hardness is kept in one place without scattering in the air by a certain kind of a force, inward force, which holds it into that particular position. According to Theravādians, the existence of these particles are momentary. They arise and pass away suddenly. But even at a subtle, short momentary existence, they remain in one place. That thing was held into that place because of a cohesion. And that cohesion is the inward force. So then the hardness would not be stable if only the cohesion exists. So there is an outward push which causes this hardness to spread in a certain volume, That push, because of that push, the hardness, the resistance for another matter to go through it starts to exist in a certain space. Why? It has been pushed outwards. It has been pulled inwards by a certain force called cohesion. So when these three qualities exist, what happens? Hardness starts to exist in a certain volume of space, and it is not scattered because there is a bonding power which keeps it in one location. So because of this cohesion and because of the pushing nature, what happens? The hardness starts to appear in a certain space. So it gets a certain volume and a shape. It appears as a something. Then the second element, which we call the heat or the coldness, according to the Theravadians, would facilitate the proper functioning of these elements. So we normally call the heat strengthens the other three elements. Heat or the coldness. We have both the explanations. Whatever it is, that is a quality which strengthens all other three qualities. So it facilitates its proper functioning. So therefore, when the four qualities come together, they appear as a thing. It's not that the all individual qualities are things. It's just a hardness, just a cohesion, pushing nature, and heat or coldness. So when they come together, they appear as a thing. So then with these things, these particles, the physical world is made of. So in this intellectual analysis, the qualities that cannot be further divided are called Rupa, according to the ultimate teachings. According to the ultimate teachings. This Rupa means, even for this, conventionally we call Rupa corporeal elements. Rupa is corporeal elements. Conventionally we may call, in the intellectual analysis of this kind of a Rupa, a thing, the qualities that we end up with that cannot be further divided are also called Rupa in the ultimate sense. Conventionally, this is a Rupa. Ultimately, these are the Rupas. So when you are talking about the ultimate realities, these physical qualities are called Rupa according to the Theravāda tradition. According to the Theravāda tradition. So then when these are the main four qualities, we call them the great elements. If you go into the handout, you find there are hardness, cohesion, and liquidity. Liquidity is something has to be explained with a bunch of particles. Then heat and coldness, and then vayo, pushing or bolting nature, the pushing nature. These four elements has to be explained. Now we just explained about how they exist within a particle and how they affect each other within a body of particles. Also has to be explained further. I'll not take much this moment to. I will not focus on that aspect at this moment because it takes some detailed explanation. Then when these four great elements come together, there are some other elements which also appear together with them. If you go into number 6 in the 14 derived elements, 14 derived elements are the Rupas when the four great elements come together. Make it clear. The four great elements come together: hardness, heat, and coldness. Right? When the four great elements come together, few other new elements also appear within a cluster. Within a cluster means they stay always in cluster. I think in the very first lectures we mentioned none of the conditioned realities according to the Theravada tradition exist alone. Always they coexist with some other conditioned realities. We call them clusters. Mental clusters or physical clusters. Physical clusters were called Rupa Kalapa. Mental clusters were given the name Chittupada. If I recall the studies again, Rupa Kalapa. Rupa Kalapa. Physical clusters. Then we have mental Nama Kalapa. Mental clusters. Physical clusters and mental clusters. What does it say? physical, corporeal elements, whatever it is, they do not exist alone. They cannot have the ability to exist alone. They always depend upon, like, in groups, like they are like communal stuff. They cannot live alone. Normally, like humans are communal beings, but still humans can live alone in some cases, but they greatly depend on each other. So likewise, Rupa Kalapa and Nama Kalapas, Rupas and Namas, has to depend on each other for their existence. And sometimes even the Nama and Rupa depend upon each other. For instance, like the human life, Nama and Rupa are interrelated. We are talking about even a Rupa cannot exist alone. It has to coexist with some other Rupa. Rupa and Rupa are mixed together. Mixture doesn't mean they become one thing. Even though they manifest as a particle, but still the 4 great elements can be found in that very particle. The same way, Nama Kalapas, Chitta and Chetasikas, we have discussed, Chitta arise with Chetasikas. They do exist together. They have to exist together. They cannot appear alone by themselves. So likewise, when now we go back into the Kalapa, Rupa Kalapa, when the 4 great elements come together, they manifest as a thing, as a Kalapa. In addition to these 4 great elements, some other new elements also appear together with them. What are these new elements? These are called derived matter. 14 derived elements. So derived means they they are derived, appear from these 4 great elements. But actually, if we go into the essence of the teachings, we find this derived matter depend on the 4 great elements. It's the Pali word comes Mahabhutanang Upadhaya Rupa. Mahabhutanang. So it's written in the genitive case, but the commentators say the meaning should be taken in the accusative case. Mahabhutang Nisaya, depending on the great elements, not of the elements, not of, depending upon, depending on. It means all these 14 derived matter are different elements. They are different elements. They are not parts of the great elements. They are completely different elements depending upon the 4 great elements. That is also something that we have to keep in mind. Otherwise, we can reduce all the corporeal element into 4 great elements. No, according to Theravadians, there are altogether 18 corporeal elements which have their own independent existence. Independent existence means they have their own existence. They are a complete different end. It's not a part of something. It has its own existence like a different human being. But they cannot exist alone. That is a different case because they are unable to exist by themselves. So they do depend upon each other, but that doesn't mean the derived matter belongs to the great elements. Even great elements cannot exist alone. They have to coexist with each other. So in the same way, derived matter exists on this. Now, why do we distinguish? Because if everyone is depending on each other, why do we distinguish the great elements and the derived matter? The reason is normally the derived matter doesn't get the support. The 4 great elements doesn't get the support from the derived matter. It's the great elements are supporting the derived matter. So it means that we have 4 main classification, the 4 great elements. If you look into the handout, then we have 14 derived elements. So the support is given from 1 to 2, not from 2 to 1. The main support. There are few cases like 2 rupas who support these 4 great elements, but that is for their persisting during their persisting period, not for the arising when they are coexisting. So we normally say it is also a fact in the tradition that the 4 great elements support the derived matter, not the derived matter is supporting the 4 great elements. But it doesn't mean derived matter doesn't have their own identity. They do have. They greatly depend on the 4 great elements. That's why we classify them into 2 groups. So in the physical world, the most prominent or imperative is the 4 great elements. Then we come into derived matter. When they come together, certain derived matter exists or happen to arise together with them. Another thing to mention, these all material stuff, material qualities, whether we call it stuff or qualities, they have a momentary short existence, like the nama, like the mind and the mental factors. But the thing is, according to the Buddha's teachings, because in Anguttara Nikaya, he mentions that he doesn't see any other element which is faster or which changes rapidly as the chitta changes, as the chitta does. Therefore, according to the Theravadians postulated or suggested that the matter has a long lifespan than that of a mentality. So Rupa lasts longer than chitta. So in the very ancient commentaries, Buddha has never given a specific mentioning in the Tipitaka how long, what is the ratio between matter and mentalities. The very ancient commentaries, they suggested it to be 16 and 1/3 of 16 consciousness and 1/3 the Rupa exists. When it comes to Pali commentaries, referring to the some text, the Venerable Buddha Goswami rejected this idea and suggested that it is 17. The mind exists, the Rupa exists for 17 mind moments. That is what normally we study these days, but that was not the idea of the ancient commentaries. They explained about a Rupa which has 16 mind moments and 1/3. Then when it comes to the Mulatika, the sub-commentator, he goes back and says it has 16 mind moments. Anyway, there is an argument, or there is no agreement among some scholars about this lifespan. But a fact that is accepted by all the Theravadians is that the Rupa exists longer than the Chitta. The accepted norm, the idea within the tradition presently is that Chitta, Rupa exists for 17 mind moments. Like one Rupa arises and lasts and passes away. During that period, 17 minds arise and pass away. It's like if Rupa arises and lasts and passes away, just drawing it roughly, 17 minds arises and passes away. These are 17, just for one Rupa. So these are momentariness of Rupa. So according to them, non-like science, which advocate that all the electrons, protons that we have were created in the Big Bang 13.7 billion ago. The Theravadians are of the opinion that even the Rupa, the physical stuff, exists and arises and passes away, like the virtual realities in physical science. There is a reality called virtual reality, which are not considered as the main essence of the universe. These virtual realities in the space arise and pass away, and it has been proven by scientifically that such elements out of nothing appears and passes away. So Theravadians' realities, the physical realities, are of similar nature. They arise, pass away, but it's not out of nothing. There is a reason for that. That reason, sometimes a physical element, physical stuff, physical thing can exist. While it exists, another physical thing, which is a combination of the four great elements, appears suddenly and passes away. And out of this, when it exists, another physical stuff arises in a different location. It is not coming out of it like a bacteria is divided into two cells. Not like that. This is because this particle, a new particle arises. That is how the Theravada explain, and it passes away rapidly after 17 mind moments. It's very, very rapid speed has been explained in the Theravada tradition. So now, during this momentary existence, now I come back to the derived matter. During this momentary existence, there are some other elements that arises and exists together with the great element. So if you go into the list of the 14 derived matter, we find Chakku Pasada, eye sensitivity, Sota Pasada, ear sensitivity, Gana Pasada, the nose sensitivity, Jiva Pasada, the tongue sensitivity, Kaya Pasada, body sensitivity. So these sensitivities doesn't mean the physical eye. within the physical eye, there are the four great elements. In one part of the eye, there is a certain sensitivity or mirror-like quality, I would call it. A mirror-like quality. Mirror means now when there is a mirror, the things of the light would reflect on it, and the shadows or the images of the objects would appear on the mirror, on its surface. So likewise, within the eye, inside the eye, there is a certain physical quality which accepts the images of the physical things which are in front of it. So it is sensitive to the color actually, but the color, how the stuff is arranged, it appears in a certain shape. The color is more prominent. So then this color makes a contact with this mirror-like image, the sensitivity. We call it the eye sensitivity, the mirror-like quality within the eye. So then because of this connection, we happens to see our consciousness. The eye consciousness arises on the eye and it starts to see the object. For instance, it's not the brain, according to Theravāda, it's not the brain which sees the object. It is the consciousness that sees the object. Like this is the eye. There is a certain kind of a sensitivity here. Physical object, when it makes a contact, a consciousness arises. With physical factors, mental factors. This is the eye sensitivity. This is the physical eye. The entire thing is the physical eye. Eye sensitivity is the quality, like the mirror-like quality, which allows the images of this physical thing to appear upon. The same way, ear sensitivity is the quality that is physical quality. This physical quality exists in a kalapa. Kalapa means in four great elements, when sometimes within certain four great elements, this sensitivity exists. So that becomes sensitive to the, we call the physical color. So then ear sensitivity is, there is a certain kind of a sensitivity within the ear, which is sensitive or receptant of the sound. Gana pasada, nose sensitivity, the smell receptants like receivers, or the sensitivity which is sensitive to the smell. Tongue sensitivity is a quality which becomes sensitive to the taste. Body sensitivity means a certain quality within the physical body which is sensitive to the touch. So they all depend on different elements. Like different elements, when the four great elements come and appear as things, substances, these in some particles, these sensitivities are found. Then when we come to another a few types of derived matter. These sensitivities, the first five sensitivities, are not found in all the four great, not found in all the particles. But these now, number 6, number 8, Gandha, and number 9, Rasa. 6, 8, 9. According to the Theravadians, whenever the four great elements come together, a color also appears in that same location. What does it mean by color? Color is something which is sensitive to the eye sensitivity, which is sensitive to our eye. So for the four great elements appear in that same location, in that cluster, a new element called color does appear. That color doesn't belong to any of the four great elements. Now, if we say the yellow color cluster, yellow. Now, cluster is made out of Patavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayu, hardness, cohesion, heat, and pushing nature. It's not the color of hardness. It's not the color of cohesion. It's not the color of heat or the pushing nature. Color is a separate element which arises when the four great elements come together. It's a separate element. Unlike in science, according to science, color is a property of the light. It's not a property inbuilt within the object, but according to Theravadians, color is within the object. It's an inbuilt quality. And everything in the world has a color, but there are certain colors which are very subtle. So our eyes are not sensitive to. For instance, the air also has a color according to Theravada, but it is not sensitive. It is not sensitive to our eye. Then number 8, Gandha. When the 4 great elements come together, there is another separate element appearing in the cluster, within the cluster, which we call Gandha, or the smell. Scientifically, smell is a sensation. When the chemicals react with the receptors in the nose, a sensation which arises is called the smell. It is not something within the object. It's chemicals. Chemicals contacting with the smell recepting cells or receptors, a sensation occurs. That sensation is termed as Gandha. Even the same for the Gandha means smell. For the taste, chemicals reacting cells, sensation appears, that is called taste. But according to Theravadians, smell and taste are within the object. They are not just subjectively known. They are not subjectively known. The object itself has a Gandha and Rasa, the order and taste. So Theravadians advocate that whenever the 4 great elements come together, this color, taste, and smell do occur together with them, together with the 4 great elements. Then we come to number 7, the Saddha. Saddha is sound. Sound is not found in each and every element, each and every particle. When 4 great elements mean they cannot exist together, exist alone. Great elements means when we say 4 great elements, they exist in clusters. They manifest as things. So these clusters, when they clash upon each other, clash with each other, or when the clusters which are closely bound to each other are separated, when there's a clash or a separation of the bounded clusters, a new cluster appears. For instance, when 2 clusters clash, at that time, a new cluster appears with the 4 great elements. In that 4 great elements, there is something called sound. This sound becomes sensitive to our ear. This sound becomes sensitive to our ear. Scientifically, we know it's just a wave which has a different functioning than the electromagnetic waves. It's a different functioning. But this sound makes a impact on our ear, so we hear the sound. So sound is something which is inbuilt in certain particles. When the particles clash together, or particles which are bound with each other are separated. This is how the Theravadians would explain. So these Varna, Gandha, Rasa, and the color, sound, order, and taste are greatly different. The Theravadian explanation greatly differ from the scientific explanation, that I have to admit. Then there are another 2 types of special elements which are called Itti Bhava and Pumbhava, femininity and masculinity. Femininity and masculinity, which is also inbuilt quality in some kalapas. So according to these 2, we have to explain how something, a person become a feminine or a masculine. Then we go into, in the further explanations, we go into the lust. There are 2 types of lust called Itti Raga and Purisa Raga, the lust of a man and desires of a woman. So that is the main reason for this, someone to get the certain as living beings during the samsara. Either one is a man or a woman. There can be transgender, like transgender means transition of gender within the tradition. But how the tradition explains is not what we see today. It happens overnight, but normally we know that it happens. It is a process. It's a process. But still, according to Theravadians, there is a moment that a person has to be called a woman or a man. There is a clear cut on it, Even though it has happened over time, there is one moment that still a man transforming into a woman. During the process, still he's called a man, and then at one moment he should be called a woman according to Theravada tradition. So though it takes a long process, there are certain clear-cut explanations, because there is no third gender according to the Theravadians. There's no third, only in man and a woman, masculine and femininity. But there is explanation of it has happened in the past, like transition of gender. It happened to a monk, and the Buddha mentions that it's not necessary to reordain the monk. He gets all the vasa that he had already, and he's the same preceptor. No need to change the preceptor even, but he should be given the status of a bhikkhuni. A monk became a lady, and she was automatic. Woman became a man, a bhikkhuni became a man, and he was put into the monks group clan, and he became a monk. He had all the vasa and so forth. And also there are explanations the Buddha gave. What about the offenses? That if the person has committed the offense that is common, still that offense is valid even after the transition of gender. If a monk has committed some offenses that are exclusive to monks, which are not given to, not enforced on bhikkhunis, in such cases, if the gender transition happens, the monk, the new nun, is free that he had committed as a monk. Committed as a monk means that are not common to the bhikkhunis. If those offenses are common, also have to be followed by nuns, still that falls. Follow him. He has to purify himself. He cannot just have excuse on it. So likewise, there are certain Vinaya protocols on it and few other. So Ittibhava and Pumbhava are certain two natures within the body, within certain kalapas, which makes the entire body to appear as a man or a woman, as a man or a woman, right? So in some cases, these two qualities may not exist. Both the qualities may not exist. So we call him a Napunsaka, or a person without a specific sex. Then Hadevatu is Hadevade Rupa, means the conscious. Now certain particles have another separate element called Hadevatu, which enables the consciousness to appear upon it, which becomes the base for the consciousness. It becomes the base for the consciousness. According to the tradition, it appears in the heart. It is found in the heart, within the heart, not the physical heart, within the heart. So the consciousness appears on such clusters, which the consciousness cannot appear on just normal clusters. The four great elements, color, taste, and smell, all this cluster has to have this Hadevatu, the special element, for the consciousness to appear on it. It has to have that special element. So that is the element which facilitates the arising of consciousness. Then we come into another Rupa called Jivitindriya. Jivitindriya means the life faculty. Life faculty. Hadevatu is the base for the consciousness. Jivitindriya is the life faculty. Life faculty means a certain, we call it vitality. Vitality. In ancient philosophies, people believed that, according to science, what I'm saying, scientific point of view, they should say, in ancient world, the people believe that there is some kind called vitality, which is necessary for the living being to sustain during his course of life. But biologically now they would say it's not necessarily that such a vitality is necessary, because we can explain, the scientists can explain how the cell functions. The functioning of cell has been understood according to them. But in the Eastern philosophy, especially in Theravāda tradition, sometimes the vitality is given by the god. In some cases, like in Theravāda tradition, this vitality is created or produced by the past karma, actions we have done in the past. The karma is the energy of this life, the life blood, which is the fuel which makes our body life to continue till from our birth to death. So there is a certain element called vitality, life faculty, which appears in some clusters, not all the clusters, but they are spread all over the body, all over the body. So this vitality causes for the continuation of the body, for the proper functioning, I would call. When the elements, the separate element, the particles would function in generation, their generation would not collapse. So that's what is called living. It's called living. It can be found, this generation, not even in a table, the generation would not collapse. So, but the thing is, in this case, A life is a production of the karma, and the karma does not exist. Now, karma has passed away. In the past moment, it was done. Now, a person has been born newly. The karma does not exist anymore. There is a potency of force. We are talking about a reality. So, at the absence of the karma, still the life which is produced by the karma can sustain. Why it can sustain? There is a certain element called vitality, the life faculty, right? That we have to explain. There are lots of information to be given to understand this faculty overall. Then our final element is oja, the nutriment. This is also whenever the four great elements come together, when the four great elements come together with color, taste, and odor, color, taste, and smell, another element comes is the nutriment. Nutriment is when it has been eaten, when it has been put into the body, it supports the body of certain beings, or it creates new corporeal elements. So it's called the nutriment. It is highly found in food, edible food. Even in this wood and all this stuff, the nutriment can be found. I think some of you are aware that there are people who can eat steel and glasses and still sustain, still can live their life. So the reason is, according to Theravadians, this oja is found in all the corporeal elements. Right? This is the basic explanation of the rupas. So these are all just qualities. Out of the 14 derived matter, number 6, 7, 9, and 14, color, 6, 8, 9, and 14, color, odor or smell, taste, and nutriment can be found in every cluster. Whenever the four great elements come together, these four are found in every cluster. That is the mainstream Theravada understanding everywhere in the universe. But there is a disagreement about the Brahma world according to the Mulatika sub-commentary, because referring to the texts, he suggests that in the Brahma realm, and oja, these three are not found in the material cluster. According to him, in the Brahma realm, the minimum cluster is 5 rupas, but normally the mainstream Theravadians accept the idea that there are 8 rupas in every cluster. So, and the last thing to mention, this cluster, when the great elements come together, a cluster is not made. A cluster is not made. The great elements and the derived matter appear, take some volume of the space, so they manifest as a thing, as a cluster, as a particle. A particle is not made. When the four great elements come in a cluster, a particle is not made. It appears or manifests as a particle. The same thing, when the wood is assembled, a table is not created. It appears like a table. Our mind takes it as a table. So likewise, when the great elements and the derived matter come together, appear in a cluster, it appears as a thing, but as a particle. But when we analyze intellectually, we find we can reduce this particle into physical stuff. But the thing is, in the natural world, these elements cannot exist alone. They cannot exist alone. They exist always in clusters. So what we find practically are the particles, but if Theravadians, reduce them into qualities. So in the end, what we find is our bodies, the physical stuff, the world we experience is a combination of just physical particles, which are not selves, which we cannot call self. Hardness can never be called a cell, and we would not accept it as a cell. Cohesion, heat, we are not going to accept it. But still we think that there is a self, or I'm here, I'm talking, and I myself do certain things. That is our basic understanding. So to get rid of that understanding, what we have to do is to focus on these physical qualities separately. When we start to see our body as a hard thing, which is hard, and also which has cohesion, heat, and so forth, though they exist together, what a yogi has to do is focus on them separately, one at a time. Then he understands it's a combination of the four great elements. The hardness itself, when we focus on hardness, the mind would say, no, it cannot be called my or I. The cohesion itself cannot be called I or myself. The heat, coldness cannot be called I or myself. The pushing nature cannot be called so. Even the color, cannot be called so. So when we focus on these elements separately, great or derived, great elements or derived elements, when we focus upon them separately, the idea of self would naturally get dissolved. Like when we are rubbing a stubborn, how to call a soap ball, a ball of soap. When we start to rub it, with each and every rub, naturally the ball will shrink, or it will be reduced, and it will get smaller and smaller. So likewise, when we keep on observing the four great, these derived matter and the great elements separately, one at a time, focusing on their intrinsic quality, the self would naturally diminish, and we'll be able to get rid of the self idea. Yeah. So these are the explanations about the elements. So from today, I will be ending this chapter about the Paramatta Dhammas. So far, we have discussed the basic qualities of Paramattas and the Paramatta Dhammas and what they are. From next week, I'll be shifting into next week I'll start recalling what is the chart that we have discussed so far. We have finished the Paramatta Dhammas, and now next week we'll be going to start Upadino Dhammas, the other ultimate natures that are necessary to explain the existence according to Theravada. Yeah, I would conclude the lecture and give the opportunity for the Q&A session.
Okay, thank you, Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So hello everyone. As usual, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand or you can put your questions in the chat box. Hi Bhante, I have a question, and this question is related to the lecture last time. So last time you talked about the jhana chittas. And then you mentioned that when a person attains the jhana and he dies with the jhana intact, which means the ability to enter into the jhana anytime, then he's going to be reborn in the Brahma world, right? And then so the question is, so when that being is reborn in the Brahma world, does he still have the ability to enter into that jhana?
Yeah. It's another question that has been discussed within the tradition. So the question is, now we mentioned last week, a person who has the jhana dies with it, dies with the ability, possessing the jhana, not losing the jhana. He dies without losing the jhana. And also I mentioned, what does it mean to lose the jhana? Losing jhana doesn't mean coming out of the jhana. A person loses the ability to enter the jhana. So that ability is lost in two ways, either because of a hindrance, a strong hindrance that has occurred in the mind, like we call nivaranas, a strong lust. A person who has jhana would lose the jhana if strong lust appears in him, or even strong dosa appears in him. So it is mentioned in the commentaries that the ascetic who prophesies the Bodhisattva would become a Buddha in future, King Suddhodana's teacher. He cried seeing the Bodhisattva, that he would become a Buddha in future, and that he'll not have the opportunity to see him. He cried and he lost the jhana, and then he regained it. It says he re-established his jhana. So when a strong nivarana hindrances appears, you lose the ability to go into the jhana again. That is called losing the jhana. Just entering into jhana and coming out of jhana is not considered as losing. The second way to lose is because we don't enter into jhana regularly. It is because of busyness or because of a sickness, whatever physical, mental inability, whatever reason. If you don't frequent our jhana, there is a possibility that he may lose it. And the tradition advocates that a putujana may lose the jhana in both the ways, whatever, because of nivarana or because of not practicing. Ariya Puggala, like a Sotapanna and so forth, may lose the jhana because only if he doesn't practice. Normally, hindrances are not going to destroy his jhana because hindrances have been already cut off. Some have been cut off and weakened because of his path consciousness. Now the question comes, a person with a jhana, this is a person with a jhana person, I would name him. He dies and is born in the Brahma realm. Brahma. He becomes a Brahma. The question comes, the jhana. Does he naturally possess the jhana by birth? According to Lady Sayadaw, Venerable Lady Sayadaw, he has a jhana by birth. This is called Upapatti Siddha jhana. Normally we put Siddha jhana, double. Siddha jhana, right? Upapatti Siddha jhana. The jhana one possesses by birth. These jhanas are considered as asankarika even, according to him. Some teachers would say, some are of the opinion that they do not possess the jhana by birth. There are arguments for that. Now, the ones who say that they do not possess the jhana by birth, a question raised is, if they do possess the jhanas and we know there is no hindrances in the Brahma realm, Brahmas don't have hindrances, how can they come back to the human realm? That's the one question raised by the ones who say that there is no jhanas in by birth. For that, the answers are given by the ones who accept the idea that there are jhanas by birth. One is, there is a possibility that the jhana Brahmas may not practice and lose their jhanas. There is a possibility. And the next thing is, what has happened in the Aganya Sutta? Like people, the Brahmas have a desire to be born in the human realm. Why is that? Their Kama Raga was not completely abandoned. So even though it doesn't appear as a Nivarana level, in the hindrance level, they still have a wish because of the uneradicated Kama Raga would cause them to like to be born in the human realm. Because it's normally the Brahmas would wish, they have a certain thought when the world is destructed. It is better that the human world is created again. It's better that the Deva worlds are created. They sometimes get a desire to get into the Kama realm. Because why is that? Because the Kama Raga has not been completely eradicated. This desire doesn't come into noble Brahmas. Even a Sotapanna Brahma would not never get that desired form. Because his Kama Raga, even though it's not fully eradicated, it has been weakened by his noble attainments. So therefore, even the ones who, according to the teachers who possess, the Brahmas possess jhana by birth, there are two ways a Brahma can be born in the lower realms. Well, that one is because of losing the jhana by not practicing, because of pamada, is not nivarna, but they may not practice regularly. And the next reason is they have a desire to be born in the Nikanti, to born in the Brahma human realm. So that's why even a person who possesses a jhana in the human realm, if he wishes, he can be born in the human realm. That wish or Nikanti. So likewise, a Brahma may also have such a desire or wish to be born in the human or Kama realm. The next thing to strengthen this argument is the Arupa jhanas. The Arupa jhanas. We know that when we go into the Arupa realms, we know that if this is the fourth Arupa realm, a person in the third Arupa realm cannot have the lower jhanas. He can have only third and fourth. He can have only third and fourth. So normally we know if someone doesn't have a jhana, he has to practice the jhana from the beginning. Like if someone wants to go into the Arupa jhanas, he has to first practice the Rupas, second, third, fourth, and then go into Arupa jhanas. So in that process, it is mentioned in the Abhidhamma that someone who is born in the Arupa, in a particular Arupa realm, does not possess any of the lower Arupa jhanas, nor the Rupavachara jhanas. So, but it is also mentioned that he possesses that particular Arupa jhana. If the person doesn't possess the jhana by birth, a person who is born in the Arupa realm doesn't possess the jhana by birth, he has to start from the beginning. And there is no possibility that he would start from the first jhana. So if the jhanas are found within them, the only possible, the best explanation, I would not say the only way, the best explanation would be that they possess the jhanas by birth. So therefore, teachers like Lady Sayadaw are of the opinion that jhanas are possessed by Brahmas by birth. Some teachers, as I remember the Janakabhivansa or some other teachers, prefer that they do not. They do not. So this is how the explanations are given within the literature.
Okay, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you so much, Bhante. So there is a question from the audience. So when you talked about the four basic quality, so the question is this four basic quality theory unique in the Theravada teachings, or is it inherited from the ancient Indian thoughts?
I'm not sure because the Patavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayu, the four great elements, the idea of four great elements did exist in the ancient India, for sure. Not only in ancient India, even in the other cultures. As far as I know, even in the Greeks understood that the four great elements. But the difference of the Theravadians is they attribute now earth is normally hard, like Patavi. The word was Patavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayu. Different cultures may have different wordings, but Patavi was considered as the hard, is the earth element, like the hard stuff. Heat is the fire. Water is the liquid element, is the water, Apo, and air is the Vayu. But the thing is, the Theravadians have gone a bit further. As to my understanding, I haven't studied other teachings thoroughly. To my understanding, the uniqueness of the Theravadians, they attribute these elements to qualities. The hardness, cohesion. It's not about water. Even in water, Theravadians would say, it says that the four great elements exist. Each and every particle. So that's what we find in the Patana. So according to the Theravadians, the uniqueness would be they are not talking about a hard thing. They are talking about the hardness. They are not talking about a liquid. They are talking about the liquidity or the cohesion which binds each other, bounds other elements. They are not talking about the fire. They are talking about the heat, the quality which is called heat. They're not talking about the air. They are talking about the pushing nature, the flowing nature. So attributing these great elements into qualities, means uniqueness within the Theravada tradition. I'm not sure because also had this explanation about the great elements in such a manner, but I'm pretty much sure that in the ancient Indian thought doesn't contain this kind of quality explanation. They would have the substance explanation on this, but not the quality explanation, as far as I know. But I cannot guarantee on this about this. Yeah. So to my understanding, this is something quite unique to the Theravadians.
Okay, thank you, Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And another question, Bhante, is about the lifespan of Chitta, Rupa. So you said earlier that in the ancient commentary, it is mentioned that the lifetime of the Rupa is 16 and 1/3 mind moments. And then in the common acceptance in the Theravada tradition is it should be 17. And then you also said that in the Tika, then it says that 16. So in the case of 16 and a half, 16 and a third and 16, then how do they explain in terms of Chitta Viti for the case of Ati Mahantaramana? Because in that case, we know that there are two Tadaramana. So how would they explain it for that case, Bhante?
I haven't studied it thoroughly because the thing is, the idea was didn't get blossomed on 16 and 3-1. It was mentioned by Buddhaghosa that this does not match with the explanations found in the Yamaka. So he rejected the idea. So I'm not able to say how the ancient commentaries would apply this into the Atimahantaramana Viti. But when we come into Mulatika, according to him, Tadalamana, if my memory was correct, can be even one. It's not necessary for to be two, according to him. So that's how he would explain that 16 mind moment, Rupa into Atimahantaramana with the one Tadalamana. Then with the commentary, ancient commentaries, to be true, I'm unable to say how they would explain it. But this has been a well-defined, very well-defined explanation in the ancient commentaries, which was translated by Buddhaghosa, and he said, I did translate this. This is how we say, I did mention this explanation, 16 and 1/3 consciousness, Maya Rupa, because it has been explained in the ancient commentaries. But still, this contradicts with the teachings found in the Yamaka. I'm not sure whether it's fully, when you read it, because it's not the Rupa chapter, otherwise I would have brought this discussion and have a thorough examination on this matter, on this case. But according to him, I would say he rejected the idea based on information found in Yamaka as he thought, and then he brought that the Rupa has to have 17 mind moments, and based on that, this then I would not say based on that the Tichaviti was created. Then we have a two Tadaramana process in two Tadaramana theory in the Atimahantaramana Viti. But according to the Mulatika, it's one Tadaramana is enough.
I see. Okay, thank you.
To say how the ancient commentaries would fit into that. I haven't done any research on this.
Right. Okay, thank you, Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, please go ahead, Robin.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ryan. Good morning, Bhante.
Good morning, Robin.
Bhante, I have two questions, Bhante. The first one is related to the last lecture, Bhante. I remember when I saw the recording, you mentioned that the way to be happy, according to our teaching, is then to arise the Kusala mind moment as much as possible, Bhante. Yeah. Could Bhante please give some kind of guidance how we can arise the Kusala mind moment more, and maybe like some kind of tips, Bhante, in our daily life? And also the second question is regarding the Hade Watu, Bhante. So could Bhante please explain it a little bit more, especially when Bhante said that it is in the heart, but it's not inside the heart. So I'm a little bit confused by that, Bhante. Thank you, Bhante.
So regarding the wholesome mind moment, there are many ways that the wholesome mind can be aroused. To my understanding, the best would be to keep your sila perfectly, like keep the precepts well, at least the 5 precepts as a human being. So, and then keeping the 5 precepts, automatically this, if someone is away from such unwholesome deeds, naturally there will be some kind of a peacefulness within the mind, because the person is not doing any harm to anyone, not the rough or gross defilements are rising in the mind. So that would naturally create some tranquility within the mind. And then the next thing is reflect on this sila again and again, that my life is pure, my sila is pure. In some cases, some can have, when this reflection is done, some can have unnecessary doubts about the sila, that we have to be aware, because doubt cannot be removed fully with just practicing sila. That has to have some wisdom. So we should be able to know that the mind sometimes does cheat on us. Cheat means make us foolish sometimes. So therefore, prevent the thoughts of unnecessary doubts on sila, but keep the sila well in an ordinary level, and then try to reflect upon it again and again regularly. So it is one way of getting a wholesome bliss. Then when we come into another tip, I would call, given to the yogis, the practitioners, Normally, we are happy about ourselves, seeing our own development, own success. That is natural to every being. So even we are practicing a sila, we see that we don't have any faults, so then automatically our mind becomes elated. Then the next point is, yeah, sometimes some people can be happy with their sila, but sometimes certain humans have more expectations, like I'm a person who can be satisfied with sila. No, sila doesn't mean that we don't strive further, but sila is enough to make the mind happier. So what I have gone through is sometimes this is not really appealing to different beings, because even something applies to myself, it doesn't mean that it has to be applied to everyone else. So it seems like sometimes a spiritually concerned person, that's why someone would ask how to have wholesome thoughts all the time, because he's he's not fully into sensuality, he has some spiritual aspect. So they have high expectations that to should have a samadhi, to have some progress and so forth. And maybe sometimes the sila is quite difficult to be practiced in some cases for some. That is also possible. That is the human mind, Putujjana mind. In such cases, the advice was given. Now, during the practice, people doesn't feel happy about their progress. That is also a huge problem for the practitioners. Then we start to get the boredom. Then we feel like boring practice. That is called arati. A-R-A-T-I. Arati in Pali. To get rid of arati, the advice was given, practice mudita. Practice mudita. Sympathetic joy on others. Now some teachers would translate it as appreciative joy. Even sympathetic joy, I think, is perfectly correct, because sympathy is not always related to compassion. Sympathizing means appreciating or accepting what others do and so forth. And appreciative joy is also a very good translation. In mudita, what we do is we observe others' success and we become happy about their success as it has happened to myself. It's against the jealousy, fully against the jealousy. So this is how the advice was given. It is not possible, the commentary says, it's not possible the person with mudita would have arati. A person with mudita would feel boredom in the practice. So what does it mean? This is my personal explanation on this. Why instead of having metta or instead of having reflecting on your sila, why it was mentioned to go into mudita, which is observing others and appreciating their success? It's because it's easiness. That's what I personally feel. Someone to become happy about someone, him or herself. Because normally as beings who love ourselves, we keep higher standards to ourselves. That's why when we are spiritually concerned, we see even the minor faults in us. In other cases, we don't want to see our faults, we always blame others. That is a different case. But when we are spiritually concerned, we tend to see even the minor faults within us. So therefore, to avoid all these faults and to come into a higher success, we need lots of effort and it also needs some time for the maturity. The spiritual development would not come overnight. So to become happy about ourselves would not be easier for some. So instead of waiting for your own success to be happy, what the teachers have suggested, the ancient teachers have suggested, be happy about others, which is quite easier. So when we develop the mudita upon others, it means even of a person with a bad manners or bad behaviors, we still can find some good qualities within him, a success about him. Maybe about his wealth, about his success in the career, about his certain good qualities or towards someone else. Maybe he would have harmed me, but for others, he would have been such a nice person. So we can appreciate their good qualities. Everyone has a good quality normally. So when we start to appreciate their good qualities and the success, our mind starts to be naturally happier, and that is much easier than becoming happy about ourselves. So it's another very nice method, technique, I would say, offered by the ancient commentators to us, that be happy about others, see their success. So naturally your mind will be happier, and that happiness would facilitate your own success, because when the mind is happy, it's easy to develop, do whatever thing, whatever practice we follow. I would give these two suggestions, like keep a sila and try to not to break it, and to always try to reflect upon the sila, that my sila is pure, leaving out the unnecessary doubts. Then try to have sympathetic joy, the appreciative joy towards others, which would also enhance our true happiness. Then the next question comes regarding Hadevattu. Hadevattu means is a subtle kind of a rupa within the clusters, which facilitates the arising of chittas upon it. So it is said in the books that it is located within the heart, in the blood, but doesn't move out of the heart with the blood. So it remains within the blood. So what happens in a heart transplant? To my personal understanding, in a heart transplant, the heart is not always necessary for this rupa to exist. That is another point, because the heart is created after a few weeks in a fetus. After the child has got conceived, it takes some time for the heart to be developed, get into a physical thing. So during that time, according to Theravadians, the heart base does exist, and it is not located within a heart. So what happens when in a heart transplant, if the kamma is still there and the other facilities are provided, the heart base would appear in somewhere in the body, or in some part connected to our body, and the chitta would appear there. When the heart is planted, new heart is planted, it would start to appear within the heart. Then isn't it the brain? Yeah, brain has a huge effect on it. I think I have mentioned this few times. Brain has an effect to the mind, even though physically they are in two different locations, because the physical effect, rupa affecting other rupas. Like for instance, the oja, the nutriment within each and every kalapa is affecting the entire body according to Theravadians. The apo can affect another rupa kalapa. Tejo can affect another rupa kalapa. So the effects of the rupas go beyond the caster. So likewise, the effects of the brain, according to Theravadian, they are also connected as one system. The brain really needs the support of the consciousness, really needs the support of the brain to function properly. So this brain has a distance effect on the consciousness, which is located in the heart. So that's how we would explain about the heart base. So according to Theravadians and according to the experience of certain yogis, the mind is located somewhere here, and in the books it is mentioned within the heart, not the physical heart, as subtle rupa kalapas, subtle matter, matter which exists in subtle rupa kalapas within the heart, associating the blood, but does not flow out of the heart while the blood is circulating. Yeah.
Okay, sadhu. Thank you, Bhante. Please go ahead, Sayale Bumya.
Yeah.
Good morning, Bhante.
Good morning,
so could you please give the reference when you talk about the ancient commentaries?
Okay, I can give you now. Go to the Dhammasangani commentary. No, sorry, Vibhanga commentary. Sorry, Vibhanga commentary. First chapter, we have something called Pakinnaka Katha. Page number 20, Vibhanga, Chatta Sangayana. Vibhanga Attakatha. Page number 20. It's a long explanation, but the specific, sorry. The specific point is found can be found in Parinamam. Yeah, in the page number 25. This is one chapter. Chapter means one explanation. It's better to read the entire thing, but you can find the specific information in 25 and 26 on these pages. And rejection of Venerable Buddhaghosa Venerable Buddhaghosa rejects this. Page number 26. Yeah, you can find it in the 26. How Venerable Buddhaghosa rejects this idea, giving some information from the ancient commentaries. So in the text and rejecting it. And he says, I wrote it. Attakatayang agatatta uttang. I wrote it because it appeared in the Attakatha. Then he tang yasa sankaro nirujjati kaya sankaro nirujjati tasa stita sankaro nirujjati ti amantati. The Yamaka, the quotation he brings, Imaya Palya Virujjati. This contradicts with this Yamaka teachings. Katang, and he explains it. And then he mentions this should be adjusted likewise, and instead of 16 and 1/3, 16 1/3 was changed. Change means suggested as 17. Based on the Yamaka, not his own opinion. But this 16 and 1/3, the Mulatika says, according to what the one sentence which was given in the ancient commentaries, we can have 4 possibilities: either 16, 16 plus, 17, 17 plus. But when you read the entire thing, read the explanation of the ancient commentaries, this is what we find. And this was rejected by the Buddhaghosa. But when it comes to the Mulatikas, he prefers this 16. So there are 3 explanations within the Theravadians about this, and what is accepted today is the 17 mind moment theory.
Okay, thank you, Bhante. A second question is when you expand about the transferred gender, if a monk who was transferred the gender, he committed an offense which is excluded from the bhikkhu offense. So did he commit that offense or not? You
mean a monk has committed an offense of a bhikkhuni? Is it?
No. For example, previously he was a bhikkhuni.
Okay, right.
And he
became a monk.
Yeah, because after become monk. But he committed offense, which is excluded from the bhikkhu order.
No. Then after he becomes a bhikkhu, what he or bhikkhu's vinaya, not the bhikkhuni vinaya.
That means if he, as a monk, he did something as a bhikkhuni, but is not offense, right?
Yeah, not offense. Like for example, some offenses are only for bhikkhunis, not for bhikkhus, right? A bhikkhuni becoming a male and becoming a monk, no need to follow, doesn't need to follow the bhikkhuni order anymore. He has to follow what it had been said to monks. But now there are offenses that he has done. Now, offenses that we do are not automatically these. There should be some specific remedy. There are protocols for that, procedures to purify ourselves. For instance, a monk committing some offenses and without purifying himself disrobes and reordains. The Buddha mentions clearly in the Vinaya, after his reordination, all the offenses that he has done and were not purified are still valid for the next ordination. He has to purify them in the new ordination. It's connected. They are connected. So likewise, a nun committing some offenses exclusive to nuns, exclusive to, not for monks. Somehow gender is changed. He becomes a monk. Those offenses that she has committed, which are only to nuns, would automatically be ceased because there's no way this monk can purify them. They are already gone. Even his gender transits again, still those offenses are cleared, because with the transition of gender, those offenses become clear. Then a nun has committed offenses that are common to both bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, and she has not purified herself. Then suddenly she becomes a man and turns into a monk. Those offenses which are common to both are still valid. Even as a monk, he has to purify those offenses.
If as a bhikkhuni that moment she was committed parajika like this.
Oh no. Then parajika is gone. She loses the opportunity at that time. So even the gender is transferred, she still is parajika.
Okay. Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, sadhu. Thank you, Bhante. Please go ahead, Mr. Ananda.
Thank you, Ryan. Professor Bhante, this question relating to the sound. So if I heard correctly, you mentioned certain clusters when they break up or when they hit together, then make sound. So is it common to, does it mean that, it is only to certain clusters, or it is common to all the clusters? Like, I mean, all clusters when they hit each other, then should they emit the sound?
That I am unable to say, because this what I can say is, now certain sounds are so subtle that cannot be detected by our sound receptors. So, and it doesn't mean that the sound doesn't appear. So the question is a question comes like, does every cluster having clashed each other, does it produce sounds? I'm not sure about it. I think that there should be some kind of strongness of the impact to create such a sound. I think so, but I'm not sure about that. This is what I feel when the question was raised. But there are certain sounds that we also know that are not sensitive to our ear consciousness.
Yeah, I'm not actually asking about the sensitivity. I mean, certain sounds are not sensitive to us.
Yeah.
But generally, I think it should produce the sound, right? Bhante, even though it is not sensitive to probably human mind.
Yeah, that's why it seems like every clash should produce a sound, and then the only thing that what we cannot solve should there be some strength in the clash? Like there should be some kind of strength in the clash for it to arise. So that
Okay.
I'm not sure to explain. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I have another question, if you have time. This refers to Napunsaka question, Ittibhava Purusabhava. So is Buddhism, does Buddhism recognize that people can be, or Sattva can be Napunsaka, or without any gender? Does it recognize? Okay. And when they are born, and can it be at the birth itself? Like, can you be?
There are two types of Napunsakas, one by birth, one at a later stage. Yeah. So normally by birth there is a Napunsaka.
Okay.
The widely accepted theory. Yeah.
Okay. So is there any particular reason that why that happens that way? It's a very rare occurrence, right? But is there any particular reason given by the teachings?
Two reasons. One is the weakness of the Patisandhi Kamma, weakness of the Kamma that gave the rebirth. And the next thing is another Kamma could hinder the Kamma and prevent it from giving sex Rupa, Bhava Rupa. Because Bhava Rupa is produced by Kamma. It's an outcome of, it's a kammaja rupa. It's produced by kamma. This we didn't classify it in this manner here in the lecture, but in the Rupa chapter we do it. The bhava rupa, the sex element, is it can be found in every part of the body, every part of the body. So that element, that quality is arising based on kamma, and sometimes a different kamma may hinder the arising of such rupas. And the next thing is the weakness of the patisadika.
Okay, Bhante. Thank you. And Theravāda.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Bhante. This is a short question here, Bhante. So, can a transgender person be ordained?
Can. Only a napunsaka person cannot be ordained. And there is another person called, how do you call it? I think you remember the word, Dr. Ryan? The one who has both Ubato Bhyanjanaka. How do you call them?
Yeah, I am not sure.
Just shall I remember the word?
I think hermaphrodite.
Huh?
Hermaphrodite, I think.
Yeah, some ones who possess both the sex organs. Yeah, sex organs. So they, even the ones who possess both sex organs, I'm talking, do not, even them has one bhava rupa, like one of these itti bhava and pum bhava. Either he is a male or a female, but he may possess both the organs by which he can do the intimate act. So such a person who possesses both the sex organs cannot be ordained. Napunsaka who doesn't have any of the bhava rupas cannot be ordained. But a transgender person, it's not a problem at all.
Okay, thank you, Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. There are two
Yeah.
more hands, Bhante. Okay.
But there's a as it was raised as a Vinaya question. I'm not sure about the ones whose gender is transferred through operation. There is one kind of a Vinaya issue on that. I'm not sure. I haven't thoroughly studied the process. If I frankly say, a man, for instance, if the testicles were removed, that person is considered not as a transgender. It is considered as he becomes invalid for the ordination. That's another third group. That's what I said when Mr. Anand asked how could a napunsaka, whether it's happened with the birth or not. According to the Buddhist theory, if the testicles were removed, naturally after some time he becomes a napunsaka. Then that is what happens during the process of the life. Sometimes it happens by birth. So even such a person is not valid for the ordination. So I'm not sure how the transgender operations are happening, because this was asked as a Vinaya question in one of the monasteries even. What happens a monk having sex with a transgender woman whose sex has been changed with the operation and so forth. In the end, there was an answer that since it has not happened naturally, that it ends up in a tulache and so forth because of it was not a natural organ. So that's therefore I'm not giving the concluding answer. But if it has happened naturally, if it has occurred as a natural process, sure he can ordain. There is no obstacle for that. But I'm not sure how there are like male becoming man, man becoming male, man becoming a female, female becoming a male. In the case of a male becoming a female, I'm not sure how to apply this into Vinaya. I have to search on the process of the operation, what happens to his physicality, and how it related to the Vinaya. But if it is a natural transgender, there is no obstacle at all that he can be ordained.
Okay, sadhu, 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 Bhante. Yes, as I said, there are two more hands, Bhante.
Okay.
Yeah, so
sure.
please go ahead, Mr. Jarit.
Theravāda Saranai Swamin Wahanse. Swamin Wahanse, when you were talking about matter, coming from a physical science perspective, the other obvious quantity that people study about would be the time. So based on the Theravada teachings, what would the time be defined as? Is it a physical property or a perceived property, or something that is derived out of other materialistic qualities?
Okay, so I'll be explaining this at the end of the lecture series. Like there is the last lectures, not the exactly last lecture. In another few lectures, I'll be discussing on this matter about the space and the time. I'll also give not in detail, but how the Theravadians look into this concept of time. So I'll just the question was raised. I'll give a very basic explanation, because actually, to be true, there is no such a detailed explanation about time within the Theravadians, because according to Theravadian, time is a concept. Time is a concept. So, but the way we explain, the Theravadian explains the Einstein's relativity theory, and this is not going to affect that, because we are talking about within one framework. Now, according to Theravadians, the realities occur and pass away. Chitta arises, passes away. Chitta arises, passes away. This is the mind process. Looking into two different occasions, we take these two occasions, whether to say occasions than locations. So looking into these two occasions, we construct the idea of time. So how a Theravadian would look into this is, it's just the natural mind process has occurred, nothing else. Looking into two specific moments of the mind process, looking into these two moments, we create an idea that something has passed. Something has passed. But when we look into this without the idea of time, we find just the process has occurred. Just a mind process has occurred. So therefore, it is like some Western scientists, philosophers especially, would say that there is nothing called time, but there is some they call a time capsule in our brain, according to them, by which we construct the idea of time. This is some idea of some Western philosophers. Even while the general relativity is still existing without being disproved, still they have idea that time is something created by the mind. Then, but within this, I'm not saying that I'm not proving this. Like this is how the Theravadians would explain. Then the question can come: what about a mind moment? Isn't this, when we say a mind moment, isn't this the idea? Isn't this the advocating of time implicitly? Isn't that without time, how can you explain about a mind moment? So the philosophy behind this theory that the Theravadians would say time is just a concept is that there is only a certain natural action occurring, knowing an object. Action occurs, arises, passes away. If another action occurs at the same time, within another, like my chitta occurs and another one's chitta occurs, according to Theravadians, both the chittas would start, it was not there, and it passes away together. So we normally say that both the chittas have the same lifespan, have an identical lifespan, because we can judge. The measuring stick would be the mind moment. So if two minds happens at the same time, they passes away simultaneously. So therefore, this would be the yardstick to measure the idea of time. Then we can go further. Another argument can be raised. We also say a rising moment, just imagine that there are two mind moments, because normally we say three, but just for the time being, two mind moments, arising and passing away. We also say that these two mind moments have an equal lifespan, equal duration. So then, if this was the basic unit of time, unit of knowing the time, so when we have, so what I understand philosophically is, if there is a unit, one unit that is a certain action, a universal action, which has a same duration, how can we have the idea of duration that both actions have been was started at the same time simultaneously and they would end simultaneously? Then we consider both the actions have the same duration. So this would be the ultimate measurement for the idea of time. Then we also advocate that in one mind moment, the arising moment, upadakkhana, and the bhangakkhana, passing moment, are identical. So if this was the basic unit, we cannot divide it into. So what is the idea? Why would we say that this and this have the same duration? Isn't that the idea of? Isn't that we are advocating? Because how can we say that they have the same duration if this is the smallest unit? So it means we know. How do we know this and this occurred that have the same duration? Because there should be some idea, something called time, by which we can measure these two. That's why we could say that this and this had the same duration if this was the smallest unit of calculating the time. Then this can also be explained in another way. For instance, when a mind has occurred and comes into the peak of the arising, this is not, the mind is not just emerging little by little. We are talking about the strength of the mind to exist. So this chart, you talk it like this. So this is the ability to exist, or we can call the strength, whatever it is. So this ability comes into a peak. Normally it goes like this into a peak point. It's not a direct line. It decreases its acceleration. The increment decreases. The acceleration drops, and then it starts to drop down. So this is the peak of the strength. So if a consciousness has come into its peak in its strength, this is called the arising sub-moment. This is how we divide it. From that moment to the vanishing moment is the passing away sub-moment, bhanga kala. This is upada kala, bhanga kala. Arising moment, vanishing moment. So when a consciousness has reached its peak in the strength, if another consciousness starts to arise at that moment, what happens? It would reach its peak together when at the moment this consciousness vanishes. So that was the yardstick. Then this consciousness passes away. Okay. So we say if the two consciousness can have the same duration, and while the one consciousness is occurring, when it has reached its peak, another consciousness starts to arise, it would reach its peak while the other consciousness completely vanishes. So we can assume that the arising moment, we can conclude that the arising moment and the passing moment have the same duration. So then we don't need the concept of a time to calculate or to say that the both moments are the same, because we can measure it by some other means. So the philosophy behind this is when these processes can be explained by natural events, if these things can be explained by natural events, occurrences, or realities, there is no necessity of a time to explain this process, because these are universal occurrences. Now someone can ask, how about this moment? How about this moment? Each and every moment. The thing is, it's a natural law according to the Theravadians. That's why it's only exclusive to Theravadians. According to Theravadians, that chittas arise and pass away, rupa arise and pass away, and these processes have such identical universal qualities. So instead of saying 10 seconds, we can say that has occurred. So the idea of time can be reduced into the idea of occurrence of realities. And within, so this unit would be the one consciousness, chitta, chittupada, akshana. So within the chittakshana, the still argument comes, how can you divide the chittakshana into two equal parts if we don't have the concept of time? How can we not without the idea of time, how can we say that they are equal? For that, we bring this analogy, this example, like when a consciousness has risen and come into its peak, another consciousness starts to arise. So while the consciousness A completely vanishes, the B consciousness comes into its peak of strength. So we can conclude that these two sub moments have identical time. So therefore, still with the process of a consciousness, we can still explain the idea of this duration. I would call the word duration. So that's how the Theravadians would say time is just a concept observing two different occasions, not locations, occasions in a mind or a matter stream.
Okay, thank you, Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Please go ahead, Dhamma friend Meda.
Yes, good evening, Bhante.
Good evening.
I have a question following up on that particular example that you just gave, and then I have my own personal question. So when you said that the mind moment, is my mind moment the same as your?
According to the Theravada, yes.
So it would be the same for everybody?
Yes, it's a universal constant.
And is that the same for animals?
Yes.
I see. All right, thank you very much. So the question I have is regarding abortion, on the subject of abortion. So the debate was if a fetus has not a certain form, then it's not abortion. But if the fetus has a certain organs, then that's considered abortion. Would you explain to me, according to the Theravada idea, what is considered abortion and what's considered a killing versus not killing?
According to the Buddha has given a very direct answer to this. According to Buddha, he has a very direct answer. He mentions, I consider the life from the moment of conception, regardless of the shape, the size, his reactions to the outside world. The moment the Patisandhi Chitta has occurred, the very moment the first consciousness has occurred within the womb, I consider the life has occurred. If a monk even supports, a monk cannot do abortion because there will be no child within his womb, right? So there's normally, so a monk, even he supports for the abortion, regardless of the age of the fetus, the monk commits parajika. It's considered as killing a human being. So it's equal in Buddhist perspective, killing a grown-up human being, killing a fetus, regardless of its size, shape, or the age. If it causes for its death or for non-living, in whatever means, giving a medicine, instructing, maybe showing a path or giving the address of a doctor who does the abortion, in whatever means he supports, he has committed the killing. So this is how the Buddha would say. It has clearly been mentioned from the moment of Patisandhi monks, he said, monks, from the moment of Patisandhi, I consider it's a living being, human being.
So when is that the eggs, the sperm hits the egg? Is that when it? Okay, I see.
It gets fertilized, like not the consciousness appears, right? So this is not directly mentioned. Buddha has not given a specific time for that. But when we go into the literature, we find like it can have some duration. It can have some duration. Because for instance, Bodhisattva's conception, it was sure that the sexual intimacy between the 8 precepts. So she was not having any sexual act with his husband. That's for according to literature. For if we go into that information as credible, if we consider it as credible, then we have to consider that the sexual intimacy or the fertilization has occurred some time before the conception. But there is a story called Kattahari Jataka in the Jataka book. I think, if my memory was correct, number 4 or something, Kattahari. Once you are, yeah, you can, even the Jataka book is fully translated into English, right? Entirely translated. So anyone can read this. This is in the first, within the first 10 Jatakas, Kattahari Jatakas. The Kattahari Jataka, one king, while wandering in a garden, met a certain woman and had sex with her because she was very attractive. The Jataka said, on that very moment, even while the king was still there, before he has left, the mother felt that she was conceived with a child. So it shows that even at that moment, after how many minutes and so forth. So according to that Jataka, in that very moment, after the sexual intimacy has happened, the child got conceived. And when we go into the Bodhisattva story, that's for sure it has taken more than 1 day. So there is some kind of, according to the literature, I'm not familiar with the scientific explanation on this. Normally, within a certain range of time, conception can happen. And also it is mentioned in the Dhammapada commentary, while the Mahakassapa was observing the life and death, birth and death of different beings, especially the human beings, he found that within a lady's womb, after the fertilized eggs were there, within a lady's womb, in many ladies' wombs, creatures suddenly appear, get conceived, and passes away, similar to the water bubbles passes, arise and vanishes when a rain is falling. So it was like many beings are appearing and passing away, appearing and passing away. Only one person who has the capability or strength, the karma is strong enough, would sustain in a mother's womb. So Buddha, while he was observing, the Mahakassapa was observing, Buddha saw his observation and he advised, he gave some advice about to the Mahakassapa. That so that also is mentioned, that such conceptions do occur regularly in a fertile lady's body, but only one or few would sustain. Yeah, this is how I'd like to share.
Thank you, Bhante. It's a debate among the Christians, friends of mine, being what fetus being aborted and when it's acceptable and when it's not. And I have stated that it's not acceptable, period, but they disagree with me. So
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, sadhu, Bhante. Yeah, I just have a comment on that.
Okay.
Very short comment, Bhante. Because
Okay, sure.
I had a chance to read a thesis, a master thesis of a monk on that Parajika. And I remember that it says that the time frame is 7 days, Bhante. So
7 days, right?
yes, so the egg and the sperm meets together, and then there is a time frame for 7 days for the conception happen.
Okay, this makes sense. Yeah. You couldn't get the reference, right? You don't remember the reference.
But I know who. I mean, I can get the reference if we
Please,
need. Bhante. Yes.
You can share next week with in the class.
Sure, Bhante.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we'll call it a day, and with this merit of teaching, discussing, listening Dhamma, the full liberation soon, and also may this merit support for the sustaining of Buddha's teachings for a longer period. Buddha sasanang chirantithatu, Buddha sasanang chirantithatu, Buddha sasanang chirantithatu, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu. Thank you, Bhante.